My name is Juliet Whitfield, and I was 35 years old when my father decided to turn New Year's Eve into a courtroom and make me the case everyone was allowed to judge. We were sitting around my parents' dining table. Then my father lifted his glass, looked straight at me, and said with a little laugh, "Still single at 35? Guess New Year's is just you and your regrets." A few people chuckled. My mother looked at me with that cold expression and said, "Some people are alone for a reason." That was the moment 8 years of silence rise in my chest all at once. I set my glass down carefully, looked at him, and smiled. "I'm not alone," I said. "I've been married for years. You were simply never invited." My mother's face went pale. My father's palm hit the table hard. "Explain yourself now." And for the first time in my life, I was ready to. Family background. To understand why those words landed like a match on gasoline, you have to understand my family. My father, Grant Whitfield, liked clean reputations and families that looked good from the outside. My older brother, Caleb, fit that shape perfectly. Married young, kids, and family pictures my parents could show people without explaining anything. Then there was me, Juliet, the daughter who moved to Atlanta and built a life. My father could not easily summarize to his friends. My father believed in family, but what he really meant was visibility. He wanted family close enough to photograph, and obedient enough to make him feel respected. For years, I let him have his little comments over dinner. "You work too much, Juliet." Your brother understood what mattered. I smiled because that was what I had trained myself to do. What none of them knew was that someone had been waiting for me at home for 8 years. The real work and misunderstanding. My work was one of the first things my family learned to misunderstand on purpose. I was the director of crisis operations for a private disaster relief organization. It meant phone calls at 2 a.m, managing emergency shelter networks, and stretching resources when communities were falling apart. My job existed in the space between disaster and dignity. I loved the work, but to my family, it was just a sign that I had chosen the wrong life. My father used to say, "Running around after disasters is not a future, Juliet." I had tried sharing the truth. When my team helped relocate hundreds of families, I sent the article to the family group chat. My father replied, "Good job," and then immediately asked Caleb about his kids' soccer games. In my family, my life was always background music. Caleb's life was the main event, so I stopped offering them pieces of myself. Meeting Ethan in the secret wedding. I met Ethan Bellamy in New Orleans during a hurricane recovery conference. He was an architect who specialized in community recovery housing. Ethan had calm eyes, the kind that did not rush people. He listened without waiting for his turn to speak. With Ethan, silence felt like room. 7 months later, we got married in a small chapel in Savannah after a summer rainstorm. There were only 11 people there, all friends, no relatives from my side. It was quiet, sincere, and ours. People ask why I did not tell my family. I did not tell them because I could already hear what my father would do with the news. He would turn my marriage into a trial and himself into the judge. One night before the wedding, I asked Ethan if I was being unfair. He took my hand and said, "I do not need to be accepted by people who have not learned how to respect you yet." So I kept my marriage private, protected from contempt. The confrontation at the table. For 8 years, Ethan was my home. I went home to Greenville alone for holidays, listening to my mother say, "You could have brought someone," and lying in small, boring ways. But by that New Year's Eve dinner, I was nearing the end of what I could swallow. So when my father hit the table and demanded an explanation, I did not flinch. I picked up my phone, opened my photos, and turned the screen toward them. The first picture was our wedding day in Savannah. My mother inhaled sharply. I swiped to more photos. Ethan and I building storm-resistant homes, standing together at galas, and celebrating our anniversaries. My father broke the silence. "You expect us to believe you have been married for 8 years and never mentioned it? Were you trying to embarrass this family?" "No," I said. "I was trying to protect something valuable from a room that had never treated anything valuable to me with care. You called me lonely for years because it made you feel right. And tonight, you tried to humiliate me because you thought I had no proof that I was loved." I stood up and reached for my coat. "If you ever meet my husband, it will be because you have learned how to respect your daughter first." I walked out before the main course was served. The aftermath and apology. The aftermath arrived like a slow crack through glass. A week later, my father had to face the fact that strangers at his church knew more about my disaster response work than he did. For a man who loved his reputation, that was a sharp punishment. My mother called me, crying, and said, "Juliet, I am sorry we made it easier for you to hide joy than share it." In March, Ethan and I hosted our anniversary dinner, and my parents came. After dessert, my father stood up, looking like an old man who had finally found the cost of his certainty. He said, "Juliet, I was wrong. I confused control with concern. And Ethan, I am sorry that my behavior made this family a place my daughter felt she had to protect you from." That apology did not erase 8 years, but it put the truth where it belonged, on him. The lesson I learned is one I wish I had learned earlier. Love without respect can become control. No one should have to shrink their happiness just because someone else only understands one version of a successful life. Your peace is not disrespect. Your boundaries are not cruelty. And your happiness does not need permission. This was a story from the team behind Revenge Broken Trust, created to share useful lessons. If you were in Juliet's place, how would you handle a father like him? Forgive him after a sincere apology, or keep your distance until he truly changed.